Hi everybody, my name is Anne Marie Corrado and I am a student in leadership and nursing with everyone at Cedar Crest College. I'm a registered nurse at Grandview Hospital and my presentation is on Terri Schiavo. I don't know if most of you remember her or not, but I remember seeing a lot on the news about her and thinking, wow, this case is going on forever and ever. So when I saw this case, that was the one that interested me out of the ones we could pick, and that's the one I chose to do. So based on that, I want to just go over a couple definitions before I go into her case. In case people do not know, a coma is sometimes referred to as eyes closed unconsciousness. It's usually not permanent, but it can go into a permanent brain death. A brain death is the irreversible loss of clinical function of the whole brain. It's diagnosed by a physician and it is based on the total absence of brain function. It is considered a legal death in all 50 states. A vegetative state, which is what we're going to be referring to, or what I'll be referring to when I talk about Terri Schiavo, is an eyes opened unconsciousness. There's a disassociation between wakefulness and awareness. So sometimes they look awake and you think they're cognizant and alert and can talk to you, but they really can't. They just look awake. The upper brain and the midbrain are not integrated in function to the brain stem and the rest of the body. Truly vegetative patients will not have reproducible responses to stimuli. So if somebody does something in a response to something, they cannot reproduce that again if a doctor does the same thing the next day. The duration for that's greater than 1 month would be considered a persistent state. Greater than 3 months is a permanent state. Now, in the case of a traumatic cause of injury, it has to be persistent for greater than 12 months for it to be considered a permanent state. So who was Terri Schiavo? She was a young woman who loved life, grew up, went to school, had 2 loving parents, met her husband Michael in college, fell in love, got married, and at 41 years of age, she suffered a cardiac arrest in her home at 5:30 in the morning when her husband heard a thump and found her. It was presumed that she was having bulimic behaviors. I'm not sure for how long, and it didn't really give me a lot of information on specifics for that. She had at one point weighed 200 pounds, and at the time of her death weighed approximately 110 to 120 pounds. Terri's parents were Mr. and Mrs. Schindler, and her husband was Michael. On June 1990, her husband Michael had petitioned to be her legal guardian, and at that moment her parents did not go against those wishes. They agreed with that. From the years of November 1990 to April of 1994, Michael and her parents took her to multiple places for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and they even had a thalamic stimulator implanted in her brain, trying to help her come out of this state. So lots and lots of things continued over the years, the 14 plus years that she went through what she went through after this, being in this vegetative state. There was, in January of 1993, there had been a $1 million settlement at one point. Some of these facts kind of contribute to some background with her and her husband. So I don't want to read every single line verbatim here, and I shouldn't have to, but there was a lot of, rumors about a lot of things, whether he was being faithful, he spent this money, her parents wanted money, but really $700,000 of it went to her care, and that was a settlement with her OBGYN that they thought did not help her with her bulimia. So 4 years after entering the vegetative state and after 2 years of physical and occupational therapy, Terri finally went into a nursing home for care. 8 years after the incident happened and Terri entered this vegetative state, her husband had finally petitioned to have her PEG tube taken out and removed. So this was 8 years from the original incident that put her in this state. Her parents at this point totally disagreed and went against what Michael said. And that's where the legal problems ensued. So after 2 years of testimony from that point, a judge had ruled that it should not be kept in. Her husband had the right to have it taken out, that Terri was in a permanent state, and that it was not going to be reversible. And then over the next 5 years, the court challenges continued. Her PEG tube was taken in and out twice, from her parents then going against what the rulings were and fighting it. In September of 23rd of 2004, the Florida Supreme Court actually installed Terri's law, because that was the second time that the tube was placed back in, and that governor had made that law because he agreed with the parents and he wanted the tube put back in. More legal maneuvers continued, all in favor of Michael, and then finally in 2005, the feeding tube was removed for the last time. In that year, U.S. Congress and President Bush also had a review of her whole case over the last 8 years, and it was then, the conclusion was that she was in a permanent state, and it was agreed that the tube should have been taken out and she should have been allowed to die. And she did die peacefully and painlessly on March 31st of 2005. So, in saying all that, some ethical principles to think about for this case. We have autonomy, which is obviously self-governance. Terri Schiavo could not speak up for herself. So if she would have had a living will, which she would have been very, very helpful, none of these legal things probably would have happened. Some maybe, but not nearly to the extent and the time length it took. Surrogate decision maker, you know, if whoever's in charge of them making those decisions, we would hope that they would follow what the patient wanted. We have beneficence and non-maleficence. You know, a vegetative patient doesn't experience any burdens or benefits to anything because they have no cognizance of to know either way. They don't experience pain, hunger, thirst, joy. They don't experience anything. Suffering is considered a conscious state, and vegetative state is definitely an unconscious state. Justice is the last one that I would want to discuss, and I just have some questions that, you know, people could ponder after hearing this information about her. Was it justice to care for Terri for years and years when she was really never going to enjoy any type of life? Do all patients with this type of condition get treated fairly based on their, you know, their insurance, private money, funded money, whatever the case may be? And what made her case so different in the public eye? Why was her case so publicized? Probably because of the 14 years that it went on and on and on until she finally was left to be at peace. Some nursing implications, obviously talking with our patients about living wills, so important. I work on a floor where everyone is young and it's probably the last thing they're thinking about. And every time I bring it up, I get responses like, oh yeah, we're having a baby now, we really should do that. But you know, I talk to adults, I talk to my parents. You guys have all your, what you want, you know, if something were to happen written down, right? And everybody just doesn't want to seem to want to talk about it. And then it's the most difficult situation when it actually happens. Communication with family. We are big communicators. We are patient advocates as the nurses, and we do need to sit and speak with the family and, you know, be able to communicate their wants and wishes and be able to relay back and forth information. We need to help patients preserve their dignity, so we need to speak up for them. And if we do truly know what their wants and wishes are, we should speak up for them. And knowing when to say when, you know, we need to know that too. And how much is too much when we're taking care of a patient and we're doing all kinds of treatments to somebody who maybe they really never would have wanted that. So, a couple references lastly, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the presentation and you'll see my questions online. Thanks.